All right. So about LSE and what what it promises you, as long as you are proactively seeking this opportunity out and doing your best to like and giving like as long as you're willing to give your best to this, you first of all, of course, get to represent Team India. That's obvious, and it's a matter of individual as well as national pride. But other than that, you get to have a lot of training sessions and master classes. I promise you, we're going to make them fruitful. We work hard for it. We prepare documents so that things are easier for you to understand. We will have case preps. We will have mocks. So this is going to be a wholesome experience with, I mean, regardless of how you're going to fare in the tournament. So please don't think of it as like a win or lose zero sum game. It's always conducive to go to tournaments. And please don't work under the pressure of having to break in a tournament, because once you work under that pressure, you definitely curtail your ability to do your best. So just like take it lightly, but give it your best. So if I tell you to record a 7 minute long speech and send it to me after a session, please ensure you positively do that, because the training sessions have been made and concocted in a way that even if you just do what you're told to do in the training session and perhaps invest half an hour beyond the training session, it should help you break eventually. So even if you do what you're being told and nothing beyond that, as such, you probably will have higher chances of breaking. But if you choose to not, if you choose to disoblige, I wouldn't know how to like coordinate with the teams in order for us to break. And breaking is always a nice reward for you as people who are directly participating in the tournament, and as me, for me as like the trainer or who's assisting you all for this tournament. So please be diligent. I know I'm just being repetitive with this request, but that's how important it is. I've seen people lose interest or think that we'll do it in the last minute. Really doesn't happen that way. All right, that said and out of the way, the training schedule for the upcoming days so that you can set your dates accordingly and you can set your schedules accordingly. Please positively attend sessions and clear your schedule for these timings and these dates beforehand, because there's enough notice, I think, for you say, from today onwards, right? So your team declaration in and of itself happens on the 7th of November. So there are around 3-4 days in between, right? And then we will start with the trainings from 8th onwards once teams are formed and you know who your teammates are. The moment team declaration happens, as in not the moment, but like on the day that the team declaration happens, ensure that you are on a separate WhatsApp group with your teammates. Please coordinate, right? Ensure there is some cohesiveness right at the outset. Don't wait for other people to like introduce each like you guys to your teammates, or like for us to give you a nice breaking session. That responsibility is on you. Evolving a team compatibility, that responsibility is on you. And team compatibility doesn't just come by discussing case motions or case preps. It also happens through generally discussing what kind of a thinker the other person is, which speaker role they like better, or just discussing the training sessions, in fact, even so that you know you're on the same page and you know that you have a clear understanding of concepts that are being taught, this that. Please don't just meet at like in a very customary fashion an hour every like 1 hour every day, because it has to be organic growth of a team. And if there are any issues with team compatibility, etc., please do not fall out of each other's favor, and like try to be cooperative and start working together from the day of declaration of the teams, okay? Because team incompatibility also makes like really gives people a setback, but you don't realize it because it's an imperceptible evil. So you really need to have that cohesion. So once team declaration happens from 18th to 16th November, not every day, only on alternative days. So 8th, 10th, 12th, 14th, and 16th, 5 days, 4 days. 4 days we are going to have trainings, and then for the last 3 days we are going to have mock debates. Okay. Now mock debates, don't cling to this idea of mock debate that, oh, we want a debate every day. Some days we are going to case prep, because yeah, case preps are also conducive ways of like practicing certain motions. Also collective thinking is involved. Case prep is just basically when if 30 people join, 15 are for, 15 are against, and all of us collectively come up with case lines and rebut and counter argue with each other, but with no structure or speech, just to throw around some ideas and fiddle with them on a collective level. So case preps are also nice, just activity sessions, call them activity sessions. It could be mocks, it could be case preps, it could be whatever, but as long as they actively involve you as a debater, as a thinker. Now, to 16th then would be theoretical sessions. What are we covering in them? uh, First of all, the format and the most fundamental things about the format, as to how many sides there are, what are the benches supposed to do, how things are supposed to be, what is speaker roles, what are the various speaker roles, all of those basic questions, which most of you might know about already if you have been active participants in this particular format in the past. But this still helps, okay? So don't skip sessions just because you think you're too smart for them, because you're not. Like, if you want us to escalate the level of discussion, we can do that, but skipping the session is not allowed. That is a caveat I'm giving you at the very outset. Then after the first session is over, I will try to cover the format today itself so that the trainings can be intensive and people are not like complacent, the ones who already know the format. But even when I say we'll be discussing the format and stance fulfillment, it's not at a very rudimentary level, which is to say that it's always a notch higher than what you already know. So choose not to drop the training sessions. We are always going to do something new. If not that, at least come for case preps, because case preps can never go out of fashion no matter how much of an expert you think you are. So format and stance fulfillment on one of the days, then we will have speaker roles, important things to discuss as to which speaker is supposed to do what, because different speakers have different responsibilities given the sites they are on and giving their order in which they speak, as in which speaker are they speaking after and before. And then we are going to be talking about the arguments and rebuttals, which would essentially involve, of course, argument formation. How should an argument be formulated? What does it need as a back, like as a foothold, which is just basically your characterization. What does setting up of a debate look like, which is called the characterization in the debating parlance. All of those things we are going to discuss. Rebuttals we are going to discuss exclusively. I think rebuttals, it's also a domain that not many people have already studied about, even if they have practiced BP format. So stay tuned for this, and I want heavy participation on the day we're doing rebuttals, because a lot of us lose out on rebuttals because it's very, I mean, nobody discusses rebuttals theoretically when they can be, because rebuttals also have a structure and rebuttals are also of various types. So it's not just plain denial of what the other side is saying. It's a bit more nuanced than that. Sometimes you don't deny what the other side is saying. You play along, you pander to what they're saying, but try to flip arguments and concede. And all those things we'll discuss later. I'm not trying to get into the nitty-gritties of it, but that's basically what we have in store for us to do in the training sessions. And 17th and October, 18th October, like I said, once we have everything in place, all of us know how to rebut, all of us know what an argument is made up of, what are the components. We'll be doing case preps and mocks in order to see how much of it you've been able to absorb. And then you will have constructive feedback from me and Afreen. Afreen is another very capable trainer we have on board. She has broken at various tournaments, and we have adjudicated at various tournaments. So we are fully capable of giving you feedback, which is eventually going to help you all, as long as you choose to get yourself involved in the mocks and the case preps. Any questions so far are more than welcome, because I'm going at a very fast pace. I just realized.
No questions, ma'am.
Perfect. Thank you, Amrita, for the clarification. Just raise your hand. Sanvi, yes.
Could you just specify the dates that will have alternate classes?
Okay, so even number dates, 14th to, just let me go back, just in case yeah, 8th, 10th, 12th, 14th, and 16th.
I had a question.
Thanks.
Tanish?
Yeah, so I just wanted to know on what basis will the teams be formed and how will that work out?
Okay, that's a logistics question for which you need to reach out to the AugLi number or the AugLi ID, both of which I'll be putting in the chat before I conclude this session.
Great, thanks.
Questions? Seeing none. Moving on to the format then, because as far as orientation is concerned, that's pretty much it. You have trainings, we'll be covering everything in the training. So orientation is pretty much that, and team formation will happen, which Kamal sir is responsible for. So if you have any questions with reference to like team formation, or if there are any conflict resolution, if there is any conflict resolution from the past that you might want us to want us to know about before we form teams, please reach out to the AugLi number. I'm sure some of you might already have it. If you do, please put it in the chat as well. Otherwise, I will do it myself by the end of this session. Cool. Moving on. About the British parliamentary format then, I don't think a lot of us know about what this format entails. So only a few of us do. So bear with me, I'm going to take it up from scratch. The British parliamentary format of debating includes 4 teams in one round in one room, which means at the same time, on the same motion, in this 4 teams debate simultaneously. And these 4 teams are called the opening government, the opening opposition, the closing government, and closing opposition, which I am also going to be like that, which is mentioned in this particular figure that you must be seeing on your screens. Opening government has 2 members, opening opposition also 2 members, closing government 2 members, closing opposition 2 members. That's how it operates. What is like the procession of the debate? Prime Minister, which is like the first member of the government side, would open the debate, followed by leader of opposition, the first person from opening opposition, followed by deputy prime minister, who is the second speaker of opening government, followed by the second speaker of opening opposition, who is also called the deputy leader of opposition, right? And this is called the opening half of the debate. If you want to take a screenshot because you think you might forget, you're welcome to. This is the opening half. Cool. So this is the opening half. In the opening half, you will have OG and OO. Also, please familiarize yourself with these abbreviations, because I won't be saying opening government, opening opposition all the time. It's very long for me to just keep like saying in without the abbreviation. So OG, OO, CG, and CO. Now, how are they? Now, you might ask, like, if you are a newcomer and if you are not familiarized with if you're not familiar with the format, you might ask me, why do we have 2 government benches, right? Like, what is the purpose? If we're debating on the same motion, let's say the motion is this house supports democracy. How is OG different from CG in what they're running? So that I'm going to specify later. But at the moment, the opening, understanding the flow of the debate in a VP format. On OG, you have the prime minister and the deputy prime minister from the government side, 2 members. On opposition, opening opposition, you have the leader of opposition and the deputy leader of opposition, again 2 members from the opening. This is also again an opening bench. Both of these teams directly engage with each other. What does direct engagement mean then? That the opening OG and OO can directly rebut each other and listen to each other's arguments, and also and engage with each other in their speeches, right? Because they have their speeches one after the other. But once opening government and opening opposition are done delivering their speeches, which is to say that once the opening half of the debate is concluded, they do not have a follow-up speech that they can possibly get a chance to deliver if they want to engage with CG and CO, which is the closing half. So how do these first two teams engage with the last 2 teams and vice versa? That's another question that might come up, but we'll deal with that later. Before that, let's go on to the closing half of the debate. Once opening half is concluded, I mean, it's not like there is a gap or a break in between that's given to you. I'm just saying opening half because that's how we put it in debating for some reason. And but don't think of it as 2 separate debates. These are same debates with 2 halves. So once opening half is done, automatically the closing government starts their debate, right? I'll tell you what the closing government does and how that's different from the opening bench. But the fact is that closing government's first member, who is also called the member of government, in short MG, is the person who will start the case from CG. And then the member of opposition, who is like the first person from closing opposition, also called CO, is the one to deliver the speech next. Then the government whip. Government whip is just basically the second member of closing government, just like deputy prime minister is the second person from OG. And opposition whip is the second member from CO. So these terms might be confusing, but the concept is very simple. There are 4 teams, each has 2 members. They get to alternatively deliver their speeches. Opening half engages with the other opening half, closing half engages with the other closing half. Are there any questions so far?
I wanted to ask, like, if we are on a member of the government, so are we unable to rebut any arguments given by the deputy leader of the opposition or
Good
leader
question.
of the opposition?
Good question. I'll come to you. Let me just clarify this in detail because I anticipated this question and it's a legitimate question. Okay. So okay, now let's talk about engagement exclusively. Okay, now that you understood the flow of the debate, you have also understood that once my speech is opening whichever speaker, prime minister, deputy leader of opposition, DLO, is over, how do I engage with what the closing government is saying? Let's understand what the four teams' relation to each other is then. Okay. Of course, OG is in direct conflict with OO. They have to defeat OO. First of all, in the four teams that are there in the debate, how are you ranked? Like, how do you win or lose a round? You are always ranked like this. You either get the first position, the second position, the third position, or the fourth position. If you get the fourth position, you get 0 points. If you get the third position, you get 1 point. If you get the second position, you get 2 points. And if you get the first position, you get 3 points. What do these points mean then? 3 points mean that you have taken over three benches, right? The second bench, like the person who came third, second, third, and fourth. The teams that came second, third, and fourth. So that's why 3 points. So the number of benches you take over are the number of points that you get. That's how winning and losing works in BPs. What does this mean then? That if there are four teams, one team wins, which means even if I am opening government and this is closing government, which means both are government and both are supporting the same side of the motion, I still have to defeat this closing bench of my side. Even though they are on my side and they'll be giving similar arguments, I have an obligation to defeat this side because I want to get the first position, right? Likewise, opening opposition and closing opposition do not contradict each other. They also do not rebut each other. They only extend on each other's cases, but still they have to extend in a way that their case sounds more strong than the other side's and thereby giving them the debate. So the dynamics between between government and opposition then are that opening government is in direct clash with opening opposition and closing opposition, because these are sides that are saying that are proposing what government is not. So whatever the government is proposing, opposition is opposing, be it opening or closing. But closing government is not opposing what opening government is saying. It's just extending on what opening government is saying. So how now I bet this is clear, right? As to who is conflicting with whom. But then how do I win over my own bench, such as opening government over closing government or opening opposition over closing opposition, if both of the teams are saying the same things? This is what the win is dependent on. If CG is able to bring new and better arguments in the debate as compared to OG, CG will take the debate, right? So if the motion is this house supports democracy, opening government gives us two arguments, right? But CG is able to give us two more arguments and ones that are better and have more impact than OGs. Then even though these two arguments support the same side of the house, we are looking at which arguments are more impactful in order to give this debate to one side out of the two. Likewise, opening opposition and closing opposition do not contradict each other, but opening opposition has to ensure that they say everything and all kinds of arguments are already given, so that closing opposition is unable to give anything which is new or like a better extension, because they have to ensure that they are making their side of the house win and not the other bench from the same side. That's how these two teams conflict with each other, even though they are on the same side of the motion. Now, about engagement, the question that Tanuj had, how do you engage then with closing when you don't have any more speeches left in order to engage with them? This is where POIs become extremely important for you to understand. The concept of POIs is less important in APDs, it's God in BPDs. Because if you at all want to ensure that I as OG want to win over CO, even when I don't have a way of engaging with CO, I have to imperatively ask them POIs. And through POIs, I want to clear my doubts or raise certain concerns that I might have, which will weaken the case of CO. POIs are your only means of engagement to your closing half. All right. So the long diagonal engagement like this will happen through POIs. CO will ask you a POI and you will ask CO a POI. Likewise, OO will ask CG a POI and CG will ask OO a POI. How then what does not happen in this debate is that OG, just because you want to defeat CG and you want the first rank, cannot ask CG a POI. So what is the relation between the same, teams that are on the same side of the motion? I have to win over this side and opening opposition has to win over this side, or vice versa. But I'm not supposed to knife the case on opening, which means that if I'm closing government and opening government has said something, for example, we support democracy because there is better decision making. Let's say OG says that. I on CG cannot say that, oh, OG is wrong when they go ahead and say that democracy ensures better decision making, because then you are knifing what OG said. You are conflicting what the same bench from your side of the house said, which is disallowed. It's not, it's forbidden. You can't do that. If you knife, then I mean you can't knife, but you can definitely extend on a certain argument, right? If you entirely disagree with what OG is saying, you think it's a pathetic team which is also making you lose, you just don't have to say that it's a bad argument or we don't agree to it. You can just say that, panel, there are more important things that we need to consider which OG did not focus on. That's another way of putting things. You don't necessarily have to say that, oh, they're wrong. You can't say that. So likewise, it stands for OO and CO as well, right? So you can't knife, and you can't ask the same side of your house a POI, which means opening government cannot ask a POI to closing government, because no point. You are running the same kind of case lines, you support the same thing. Just like how opening opposition and closing opposition cannot ask each other POIs. POIs are only for like conflicting benches. These are the conflicting benches. Okay, and these, of course. This is how POIs are asked. Cool. Any questions now? I'll take Zaina's first. You were put on hold.
Yeah, so my question is, even if there are two halves of the debate, like the opening and the closing half, is the closing government allowed to engage with the arguments that opening opposition put forth, or will closing government only have the chance to engage with closing opposition?
Okay, perfect question. I think closing government, okay, this is how things are supposed to be. Every bench is supposed to engage with every other bench, which means if this is bench one has an obligation to engage with bench two, but also bench three and four, So everybody is talking about every other bench. It's not like you can bypass a certain bench, because then you run the risk of losing to them because you didn't choose to engage with them. But then you might ask that, how does like OG engage with CG even before they have listened to their speeches or their case, right? Through POIs again. So you are engaging with all the benches. Ensure that you take a POI from CG in order to understand their case and deconstruct it. Preemptively talk about what CG is wanting to say by gauging it through the POI, and then try to rebut it even before their speeches are delivered. This is where the power of preemption also becomes important on opening benches. You have to anticipate certain types of arguments and extensions. Arguments that might come on closing half, and then talk about them already in your speech so that you're not becoming irrelevant as the debate proceeds, right? And then of course, on closing, it becomes easier for you. On closing, it's easier for you to deal with OG because you've already heard their case. It's easier for you to deal with OO, you've already heard their case. It's easier for you to deal with CO because you have heard their cases as well. So CG and CO, of course, they know everybody's case because they deliver the speeches later. So the process seems easier for them. But even OG and OO, it's pretty simple if you just take POIs and if you understand what. So through POIs, you are able to tell where CG is headed, or what kind of a case line what kind of a case line they're trying to run through so POI gives you a taste of that, and based on that you can build and engage with CG even if you haven't heard their speeches. That's how engagement happens in BP format. Does that help, Zana?
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other question? I mean, this is a tough format, so no questions would be a bit surprising, honestly.
Ma'am, would the government whip here be similar to what we have in WSTC of like the third speakers?
Speaker roles I will come to exclusively and talk in detail about during the training sessions, so you don't have to fret about it right now.
Okay, ma'am.
Cool. Seeing that there are no questions, I think we can proceed. Give me 1 second. Are we not recording? We are, right? Yeah. Yeah, was there a question?
Yeah, just one question.
Yes, please.
So the OG and the CG, they are the both teams are from different countries, right? Not from the same country.
Country. Yeah, you are different teams. You don't know each other.
Okay.
Team government. Okay, this is not something that I'd like to discuss today because I want to take this up comprehensively tomorrow. These are some very basic points, by the way, so you can just breeze through them. This is for like very like freshers who don't know the first thing about BPDs. So team government is always speaking for the motion, of course. So like if there are different types of motions, okay, like this house believes that something should happen, so government will say yes, we believe that this should happen. This house regrets something, so government regrets that thing. You always do what the motion tells you to do. So support doesn't mean that if a motion reads this house regrets, you will support, because regret is a negative word. Whatever you're being told to do in the motion as it is, you're supposed to do that as government. Team opposition always goes against the motion. So if the motion reads this house regrets the rise of vlogging, what we are going to do as opposition is that we are going to say that no, regretting is not worth it. We can do something else, so we can at least support vlogging, because vlogging has its own benefits and less harms. So you do exactly the opposite of what the motion says, right? In the British parliamentary format, and in like any parliamentary format, even APDs, you are not allowed to use the internet. Also, even if you end up using it, it doesn't help, because statistical data, objective data, facts, how much you know about a certain thing in terms of factual clarity doesn't really help you win a debate. BPDs are exclusively concerned with your ability to reason and create linkages between the arguments that you're delivering. Also, the diversity and the spectrum of thought that you possess as an individual, as a team. So the novelty of arguments in extensions, etc., and the ability to explain things comprehensively and not just part in bits and parts is what is relevant, which all comes intrinsically to you. So BPDs and APDs are more about method and about analysis and reasoning and ready wit, rather than like scrounging for material from the internet. So please like uh, dissociate yourself from that tendency, because I know school debate level debating has a way of teaching us that. For the longest time, even I used to think that, oh, to be able to debate, you have to be UFE in almost everything, or every discipline that exists. But that's not, I mean, that's not true at all. It's all your reasoning, which is intuitive, which intuitively comes to you if you know the method, which we're going to be discussing, and speaker rules. So speeches are going to be 5 minutes long for this particular tournament. That's their format and that's their modification in the format. So any speech will be 5 minutes long. You have to, of course, aim to beat the other three teams, including the one on your side. I've already told you that. Closing teams cannot contradict their opening. Nothing new. I've already told you that. Cool. Speaker roles in BP format then, and I'm just going to breeze through them. I'm not going to go in detail because this I'll leave for the training sessions. I don't want to cover it in a very half-baked fashion. So speaker roles, this is the order: Prime Minister followed by Leader of Opposition, followed by DPM, followed by DLO, followed by MG, MO, GV, Government Whip, Opposition Whip. Cool. Now, what are their roles and responsibilities? The Prime Minister has an obligation of setting the debate. Cool. So that is like, which would include characterization. What are the terms in the debate? What is the status quo? Status quo is just basically where the world is today. So how are we economically, right? We follow capitalism, and we are in the post-COVID era, which means there's a sense of recession in most countries, right? And we are trying to invest heavily in healthcare systems because we have learned our lessons. So if I'm trying to contextualize a particular issue, I will contextualize it keeping in mind the various dimensions of that particular aspect. So if I'm discussing economy, what is happening in economy? By and at large, we are capitalistic. We are a capitalistic society. And when I say society, global society. But other than that, we recently had the COVID pandemic, which also we have to take into consideration. So you understand, when you're talking about the status quo, you have to look at the macro picture of who we are in society, and then start narrowing it down according to what recently happened, what impacts the economy more. So defining the terms in a motion, which is the Prime Minister's responsibility, does not mean that you literally go ahead and give us definitions, which is what many of the people will be found doing. This is about talking, and this is about saying contextualizing the terms. So if I'm talking about democracy, I'm not giving the dictionary explanation of what democracy is. If the motion is this house supports democracy, I am telling you what is democracy as a form of government as compared to the other forms of government, or what is the impact that a democracy is like creates, or at least aims to or aspires to create in a society. So you define the terms semantically. Do you understand? Semantically, like what is an easier word? Meaning making happens when I say define the terms. Define the terms not in terms of literally define the terms, but make meaning out of them. And meaning happens when you contextualize them and stop pursuing them in vacuum or within the pages of the dictionary. I don't know if it helps. It'll make sense later when we start practicing on certain motions as well. So setting the debate, characterization, status quo, what the world looks like, which is very important to come in PM speech. Also stakeholder analysis. What is stakeholder analysis? So these are components that PM speeches need to have. If you want to write this down, write it down because I'm taking notes so it will help. Stakeholder analysis is just basically who are the actors in my debate. And who are actors? Actor is any person or any stakeholder, I mean, any participant who is there, who is impacted by what I'm discussing in the debate. If I say this house supports democracy, can you guys take quick guesses as to who the actors can be, as in the people impacted by this motion can be?
The citizens of the country or the democracy.
Perfect. Yes, citizens.
The common people.
Nishka?
Political parties, candidates.
Sure, yes. Raise your hands, please, so that I know who was speaking and trying to get a point across. These were obvious stakeholders. Can you think of some more? Amrita?
Voters.
Basically the citizens, right?
Mhm.
Zaina?
Active citizens.
Okay, yeah, that depends on, yeah, okay, fine. I'm
Just
going
like
to make a point with reference to this, Zaina.
just like narrowing down like the poor and the more vulnerable sections, such as the poor or minority communities.
Perfect, okay, nice. You?
The Democrats.
Democrats. Okay, all the responses are good because they give me several things to discuss. So Yuge's response in terms of Democrats, we need to discuss that. We need to discuss Zaina's, which was minority. So this was a more nuanced stakeholder. And then what did just one more response which I will want to talk about. What was it? The voters, yes. So voters as compared to citizens, how does that make a difference? Now, what Zaina and Amruta were saying is something that you need to particularly focus on. So what Zaina ended up doing, I think this is the best example because minorities get talked off a lot and you have to be particularly considerate of the minorities when you're debating emotions. Why is that the case? Because principally it's required for us as debaters to just like think about the conditions of the minority groups insofar as they have been historically like underprivileged, because of which they haven't had the platform to raise their concerns. Also, debating presumes that people in power and privilege will get away with like both good and bad things in life because of the privilege that they have enjoyed and the kind of and the less number of hardships that they have in their life. And they also have like a platform to raise their voice on and get any remedy to an issue on if they so please. But the minorities then become important stakeholders because they haven't been taken care of hitherto, and that they are the vulnerable communities. So if you are able to protect the vulnerable in your paradigm, you have an edge over the other side, which is trying to make a case for like let's say the industrialist or the prime minister. I mean, the prime minister has all the power in the world. You don't have to make a case for them, right? And you don't have to make a case for the industrialists who are like who have the coffers filled and they have a lot of money and they can possibly flee the country if there's an uh, environmental catastrophe, or like if there is a political upheaval or some sort of an anarchy spreads in a country. It's always, and if COVID happens, it's always possible for the privileged to just flee situations of exigency because of how they have the ability to. So who is the debate, who like what is who is misery more jading for? The minorities. That's why always narrowing down your stakeholders and not just taking a very broad idea of who my stakeholders are is good. That's why I said Zaina talking about the minorities in particular was good, because now she knows who she wants to protect along the way, right? As and when this debate proceeds, they have clarity on who they want to protect the rights of. Uh, and some such thing. But it does not mean that just because I'm running an argument on minority, ma'am, I didn't break, although I was running an argument on minorities. I'm not saying that you win the debate just because you're running an argument on minority. It has to be a strong debate. It has to be a strong argument, because an argument is won in this debate format or any other, in fact, on likelihood. Let's say we say this house supports democracy. Now, in reality, all of us know that democracy can be weak and strong both. So we are by and large discussing what can and cannot happen. And something that has not or like anticipatory understanding, meaning we are making guesses and we are making calculated guesses. How are these calculated guesses assessed by the judge, the adjudicators then, on the basis of likelihood and probability? So if I am saying that, oh, let's have awareness campaigns for minorities, let's let minorities be like the girl children who are unable to go to schools because their families won't allow them to. You can't just say that, oh, we should create awareness by shutting down all the industries in the world, because we need, through awareness, women will come to schools and parents will be sensitized. Now, this might be an argument that you're trying to make towards the minority group, but there's so many inherent flaws in it. First of all, likelihood. The likelihood of this happening is very low. One, because you can't shut down all the industries. Second, because awareness is not the problem. I think there's enough awareness even through the internet. You don't have to launch into campaigns in the time and age that we're living in, which means your solution, how you devise them, the feasibility, the likelihood, all of that has to be in place as well. And that only then will making arguments on minorities be effective. It's not like you're making any argument and it's going to work, of course. So that's how you narrow down on your stakeholders and find out who you want to support, who you think should course correct. For example, the politicians should course correct. Sometimes I think the most effective debates, and this could be a personal bias, but I don't know, all the debates that I've asked so far, the ones that have a likelihood of winning are the ones who are able to ensure that there is least opportunity cost, which means that there is least damage done in achieving a better world. How do you ensure least amount of damage? By ensuring that every stakeholder is better off without that incurring harm to the society. If I want to ensure that girls are able to study, go abroad if they want to, marry according to who they, I mean, not be pressurized, let's say, by conservative families and society, I should ensure that even the conservative families are not badly harmed or beaten up or antagonized or made hostile. Because I understand that conservative, we don't have an obligation to the conservative people because they are mistreating others. So principally, it's okay for them to be avoided as well. But I want to ensure a certain harmony in the society, and for that harmony, I want to ensure least damage. I want damage control, for which I want to ensure that every stakeholder is okay in the place that they're put in by me, which means that the kind of debates that generally happen to win and seem wholesome are the ones who try to benefit all the stakeholders. I try to strike a balance. The girl child should also be able to go to their school, but the parent should also have, I should also generate an incentive for the parent to feel proud about it, for them to have a reason to ideologically change themselves from being conservative to liberal so that their children can study. I want to try to make all my stakeholders happy as long as that's possible. Sometimes I understand it's not possible because the problem of radicalism always exists in the society, in which case I would like to say that your winning is not dependent on you creating the best world through what you're proposing. Your winning is only dependent on you creating a better world than the other sides. Never take this burden upon yourself to give the best world, because when you take that burden inherently on yourself, you think any sort of harm that the other side is putting on you has to be denied, when in fact you have to sometimes accept the harm that the other side is putting on you, because sometimes they're going to be saying the right thing, right? So if I'm the government bench and I say this house supports democracy, but I say that, but the other side says and counters by saying that, look, there can be weak democracies as well. I can't just get into that denial mode and say that no, there can be never a weak democracy, because then I'm not considering the reality of the situation. I'm only playing on my best case, which is why, Tanuj, I'll take you in a second. I know this has, I mean, this might have gotten a bit long. So if they are saying that democracy is a problem insofar as it can be weak, I have to accept that harm and then work on my paradigm to prove why, even if I can't bring the best world, democracy can be weak also. It still is better than a dictatorship. So I have the obligation to prove a better world, not to bring about or spawn the best world, because that is humanly impossible. Now I'll take any questions. Tanuj.
Yes. So, like in debates, we are supposed to weigh on both sides of arguments. Like, if there is harm, we are supposed to accept it, and like how on our side we are trying to solve it.
Sorry, what? Could you please come again? There was an important text. Yes.
So, like, we are supposed to weigh arguments in debate. Like, if there is harm, we are supposed to accept it, and like how we are trying to solve it on our side.
That's right. That's the right analysis. I think I will talk more in detail about this when we're talking about rebuttals, because disproving an argument from the other side is the easiest form of rebutting we know, all of us. So disproving always helps, and saying that, oh, what they're saying is untrue is the kind of rebuttals all of us know. So I don't need to explain that. But sometimes disapproval becomes difficult because the other side is saying rational, reasonable debate, right? In which case, you accept what the other side is saying. You accept that democracy cannot always be the best. There can be weak democracies. But then you prove how weak democracies can again be replaced by better democracies, maybe because there's regulation, there's the provision of power changing hands, which is still better. So even a weak democracy is better because it has the likelihood of being changed into a better democracy again when we elect better leaders. Whereas on the other side of the house, dictatorship lasts for 50, 60, 70 years without an alternative. So our paradigm is not the best, but it's still better because weak democracies will be short-lived even if they are there. Do you see what I did there? I accept the harm of a weak democracy being possible, but then I work on it in order to prove that it's still better than a dictatorship. Does that make sense, Tanuj?
Yes.
Okay. Lower your hand just so I'm not confused. Yeah. Yug?
Okay. So I just wanted to ask you that what's the best position to have in the competition, like CG, OG, like which is the best position to have in the competition?
Oh, there's no such thing as the best position, because if that were the case, then the debate would be skewed, right? Which is, I mean, you come from a place where you think there is a best position, there is not. So OG, OO, it's about preference. So for me as a debater, preferably I love CG and I love member speeches, but that's because that's how I'm wired, and that's because of the kind of thinker I am. You might enjoy OG, OO more.
Okay.
So it really depends on the kind of speaker you are, but you get comfortable with any speaker position with enough.
Okay, just one more thing. Yes. So like what's the best way to present a case and what's the best way to earn an edge on the opponents?
The best way to present a case.
Like
I
present
think
the openings.
Okay, so you're talking more on lines of how an argument is supposed to be formed, which we will do in the training session. I can't touch that now and finish it in like another 10 minutes. So, and I don't intend to either. But like we'll do this tomorrow as to how to bring effective case lines in on the table. But about winning, like I said, this is not something that I'll be covering in the training. That's why I'm emphasizing on this today. Team compatibility is very important. There's only two of you. You are given some time to prepare on the motion. If you keep conflicting with each other, and if you start coming up with different case lines, not agreeing on a certain understanding of the status quo, stakeholders, you're likely to go down, even if you are as individuals great debaters. So please ensure that you case prep enough with each other. I think team compatibility is god when it comes to winning, because in its absence you can't win. Does that help?
Yes, ma'am. That is it.
Okay, Sanvi.
Okay, all of this is clear to me, but I would like to know a little bit more about the main day, about how the teams are divided, and because we are 18 people, right? So maybe for the practice
You're not
session.
18 people. Some of you chose not to, like some of them did not join today. So you can contact the AugLi number for this, because I'm not in charge of logistics. So I'll probably be giving you the wrong
Yeah, so
information if
there
I
are
choose
12
to.
people in the senior team and 12 people in the junior team.
Yeah. There is I think there's 12, 12, 24. We will have 24 teams in total, junior, senior mixed. But then again, I don't want to give you figures because this is not my area of expertise. I'll just give you the AugLi number. I'm just getting to that. Any other question with respect to the training, because that's what I'm here for.
That
Yeah.
part I understood.
Okay, so the AugLi number as well as the AugLi email ID, which you can reach out to us on will be shared on the WhatsApp group soon after the debate. Your questions will be entertained and responded to by tomorrow morning, hopefully. So that's that. Tanish?
Yeah, so I think you've already kind of gotten over what I want to ask you, in the sense that opportunity cost is what is supposed to be analyzed and supposed to be kept in mind. But I want to know, how often does like the complete antagonization of the rich and powerful work? Because in the example that you mentioned, like democracy, for example, you said that the rich and powerful can just flee and they can still live very comfortable lives, right? In what sense can you prioritize the minority and the most vulnerable? Because the whole thing can be flipped in the sense that the rich and
I get
powerful
your
have
question.
significant
I
economic
think
impacts and stuff.
I get your question. So agreed. And I think you have a more nuanced understanding as compared to the others who might be new to the format. I was trying to explain things from the perspective, I mean, keeping in mind the freshers. So that's why I try to create a binary, which I will start breaking tomorrow onwards from the training onwards. And that's why I mentioned also, right? You can't just always run an argument for minorities, even if it's not conducive to like most of the people. Because what do you, so the best way of thinking about this is how does the adjudicator assess my argument, right? So any argument that you will win either one on the basis of likelihood. Definitely, that's a prerequisite. If likelihood is not proven, or if you're running a principle, if legitimacy of that principle is not proven, or why that's a principle in the first place is not proven, you are unlikely to be able to take that argument or even pursue it. But secondly, how the impacts matter in any argument. So be it on majority or the minority groups, the impact is extremely crucial. So if I'm making an argument, but I'm making an argument for like one single person who's minority, right? Let's say out of 1,000 people, one. So this is more like thousand, like five people sitting in one car and one other person sitting in another car. Five people, rich ones, industrialists, one person, caste discrimination, SC. Who will you save? That sort of a situation. Now, if you have to save one minority community person over the rest of the nation, of course, you won't choose to save that one minority community person over like 10 more important people, most important people or politicians in the country. So what is then the analysis of your argument based on the magnitude of harm or benefit that comes out of it? If I'm trying to look for for national welfare or welfare of a particular set of stakeholders, to what extent am I able to deliver, right? What is the magnitude of harm that comes out of what I'm proposing, or what is the magnitude of welfare that comes out of what I'm proposing? If the magnitude is big, it's okay for me to propose something of welfare. If I think there's huge harm in not protecting the minorities, then it's legitimate, like it's legit for you to protect the minorities. But if you think that majority antagonization will lead to eventually the minority suppression and will inflate minority suppression, then you might want to run an argument saying that, look, there is a need to appease the majority, even though that might not be the most desirable situation you are put in. Do you understand? So magnitude and likelihood, but also how the dynamics are going to be, how you want to rearrange the dynamics. So eventually, so okay, in some kinds of arguments, you also end up saying that, look, if you appease the majority, minority life gets better. Recently, I ran this argument saying that, look, minorities are so there was this motion which said this house opposes political centrism. I said, yes, this house supports political centrism. So the opposition, I was government, they were opposition. So opposition said that, oh, if there's going to be political centrism for whoever doesn't know is just basically not aligning with one political school of thought. So like, I'm not a right winger, I'm not a left winger, I'm just somewhere in between. So if I'm a centrist, right? So the other side said that revolutions don't happen if you're a centrist, right? French Revolution happened because people were vehement against like the class bifurcation of the society, this, that. Then we went ahead and said that revolutions can be gradual as well, right? And anything that you achieve overnight is likely to be more easily shouted down, because the people in power are also resourceful, which means if I try to initiate a revolution by becoming radical, then this radicalization will give a pretext for the majority to actually suppress me, right? This looks like public disorder, right? If I create public disorder as minority group and take law in my hands and start vigilantism, then I'm likely to be shouted down on or suppressed or cracked down on, because now the majority group has been given a reason to like, and it's legitimate for them to control me through force and fraud, because I am causing public disorder. So centrism is better because it helps you avoid violence, and which is why you give less reason to the majorities and antagonize them less with the, so there's space for negotiation and you're not so easily shouted down. Does that make sense, or was it too like prolonged? I'm just fearful of like the freshers being intimidated by like very
No, it's fine. Makes complete sense. Thank you.
cool. Any other questions? Hey guys, please ask questions. I think there's not enough questions given that you do not know the PP format just yet. So see you all from the 8th of November onwards. Please start prepping. Team formation will happen soon. Digital Matter Files is a really nice YouTube channel. You might want to refer to that whenever you have time for like nice workshops.
Can you please repeat the YouTube channel?
Yeah, it's called Digital Matter Files.
Thank you.
All right, I am ending the meet in that case. Thank you so much for joining in. Have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.